Hello everyone and welcome to a how to play video on Floe. This will be going on Kickstarter, so please be aware, components may change, rules may change, heck, I'll even have to update this video at one point. However, if you're looking to back, this should give you a really good understanding on how to play the game. Now, since this is a pre-production copy, I am skipping setup and going to go straight into game overview. Floe is played in a continuous series of turns. On your turn, you can choose and perform one of the following options. To take a village turn, you take your hero from its current location anywhere on the village or map and place it in one of the village action spaces, followed by one familiar action. And on a map turn, you may move your hero and then take one hero action, followed by one familiar action. Now, players are going to score in this game half and full points, and when a player reaches the 6th spot, as indicated by the endgame token on that space, immediately end the current round, and each player takes one final turn, starting with the first player. Now that you know the overview, let's go to your player board and explain that. You're going to have 2 hero decks, select one and put the other one to one side. You're also going to have a hero marker, 4 player cubes, 3 player discs, 5 resource tokens, 4 flowstone tokens, 1 starting set of buildings, 1 player aid, and 1 feather marker. You'll also select one familiar of your choice and bring it to your player board, placing it in the familiar spot. Now that you've got your player board set up, let's talk about the concept of warmth. Warmth in the game is a vital resource. It's like your HP, it's your movement, and gives you more actions to some degree. Players start with 4 warmth, but it can upgrade to a maximum of 8 warmth by going to the Tavern. And you'll know when you need to spend warmth because it has a little toasty symbol, just like your familiar does have in its right hand corner. Now, I believe that's everything you need to know so we can start teaching you how to do the actions in the game, as everything will come quite naturally. So let's start with the map turn. On a map turn, you may move your hero and then take one hero action, followed by one familiar action. If your hero is in the village at the start of your turn, place your hero on the main island on the map. This placement is completely free, as the village and main island are considered the same location. Now, icebergs. Icebergs connected by shallow waters, light blue areas are adjacent. To move your hero to an adjacent iceberg, you must spend 1 warmth. You may cross any number of shallow waters this way, spending 1 warmth for each. If you have no warmth, you may not move, but you can still take a hero action. As you saw, that costs you 3 warmth to move to 3 icebergs on foot. So let's think of a better way. Let's sail. We can hop on a ship for 1 warmth and move from one pier to another pier. And if there is no ship at your pier, you can call it by spending 1 bubble. You may repeat the sailing action as many times that you have warmth. You also may combine sailing and moving across the icebergs by spending 1 warmth to move to an iceberg, which would move your hero marker, and then your hero marker would do 1 walk to this iceberg for a total of 2 warmth. Now, after you've chosen to move or not move, you can perform a hero action. And you have 5 choices. You can explore an iceberg or sea, visit a landmark, have an encounter, discover a region, or delve into the caves. Let's start off with the one which is going to be the most common, exploring an iceberg or sea. If your figure is on an iceberg, it can collect the exploration token that's attached to it. However, if there is a ship on your pier, you have a secondary option to take the sea token instead. Now, after completing that hero action, your familiar may be placed onto the board onto these locations with the circle dots. This is classified as a familiar action, but they are linked to the main actions, hence why I'm mentioning it now. This will cost you 1 warmth, as depicted on the familiar card, unless it's been upgraded. We'll get to upgrading later on though. Once a familiar is placed, it can take the sea token, an adjacent iceberg token, or activate the icon that it was placed onto. So in this situation, the familiar could pick up the crate exploration token, the dive exploration token, or activate the dive icon it was placed onto. This would be a perfect time to talk about diving, since it's quite straightforward. When you dive, you select one of the dive tokens and spend the responding warmth, if any. The top one is 0, the next one is 1, the next one is 1, next one is 2, and the last one is not attainable during diving. Once you acquire the token, you move it to the bottom, and you slide everything back to the top. Now let's go through all the rewards that you can get during diving. For the potion reward, you'd move over to the potion deck, draw 1 potion, and place it onto your player board. As for the bubble reward, you move over to your player board and move the bubble marker up by 2. If you acquire a key or a chest, you move over to your player board, move the circular disc up to their respective spot, activating it. When both are active, you can acquire a treasure card from the treasure deck. Then finally, we have map tokens. Map tokens allow you to discover a region on the main board, but they're also double-sided, allowing you to make a personal flowstone shrine. Now let's go back to the main board and talk about picking up exploration tokens. In this example, this hero action to explore an iceberg or sea allows this player to explore the iceberg and select the mushroom exploration token, discard it, and then increase their mushrooms by 1 on their player board. The player may only have a maximum of that resource up to their flowstone limit, and anytime a player needs to increase the resource and they cannot, they will instead get a bubble. Now that's resource tokens completed. I've also mentioned some other tokens that you acquire through diving. They're exactly the same as acquiring them on the Iceberg or sea. Now, let's talk about the 3 types I have yet to mention. We have crates, crystals, and flags. Let's start with crates. They work exactly like potions or map tokens. You pick one up and bring it to your player board. Here is an example of a player with potions, maps, and crates. You can only have 6 of each type, so 6 potions, 6 map pieces, and 6 crates. Crates have double effects, so you may only pick one of those when you use it, and you can choose when you use it as well. However, map tokens are the only exception to the rule of having more than 6, unless you are using them as a flowstone shrine. Crystals are straightforward. Whenever you get a crystal symbol, you pick a crystal from the bag and bring it to your player board. There is no limit to the amount of crystals you can have. The flags are going to give you an encounter in the iceberg, the sea, or the cave, and they correspond to these 3 decks. Whenever you get the flag symbol, you'll draw the card of that particular colour, bring it to your player board, and flip it over. Now, when you acquire one of these cards, you'll have a left-hand side that will give you an instantaneous reward. You'll also have the right side of the card, which can be completed if you fulfill the requirements. You can do this as a free action at the start of your turn, mid-movement, or at the end of your turn. However, you may only have one type of each encounter card, so 1 blue, 1 teal, and 1 pink. Now that's everything you need to know about all the exploration tokens. Now I'm going to interlude here with the village action, as going through this now is part of the core gameplay loop, and it will help to understand discovering a region and fighting in the sea caves later on. To take a village turn, you take your hero from its current location and place it into one of the village action spaces. Then you'll follow the following steps. You'll gain warmth and move villagers, pay the villager action cost, and then trigger the action effect. So in this example, the yellow players place their meeple on the shop, they'll gain 1 warmth and is going to move the villager clockwise to the next space. If there were 2 villagers on here, you'd gain 2 warmth. One would move here clockwise, and the other one would move to the other section here. Now it's important to mention, a space may not have more than 3 villagers. Therefore, if you would place a 4th in a location, you skip that place and place the villager on the next space. So for this turn, if a player visited the academy, you remove the 2 villagers from that space and place one on the shop and then the other at the hot spring, skipping the tavern space because it's already full. Then you pay the cost, which for all 5 locations is the maximum amount of resources permitted. I'll explain this on the player board now. As you're aware, during the game, you'll be collecting resources, and they'll move up onto your tracks. Whenever you go to one of those 5 action locations, they'll correspond to a particular resource. Whenever you use that action, you must spend all your resources permitted to do that action. So the pearls, that's for the shop. Kelp, that's for using taverns. Mushrooms, that's for the hot springs. Woods, that's for the works. And then we have bubbles. Bubbles allow you to exchange 2 of them for 1 of any normal resource, or you can exchange 4 bubbles for 1 crystal. So now that you know about resources, let's talk about activating those village action spaces. And we're going to begin by talking about the shop. So to take an action at the shop, you pay your highest permitted pearl cost and advance the flowstone on your pearl track. Then, choose one of the items from the display and place it in face-up designated area to the top left of your player board. Finally, refill the item display if needed. Items in play have a permanent effect, as indicated on the card. And whenever you gain the requisite merit symbol, shown in the top left-hand corner, you immediately flip the card over to unlock the effect on the bottom. This effect can be used in cave battles, which we'll get to later. Now let's move on to the tavern. When you go to the tavern location, you'll select one of the 2 cards available. You'll spend the maximum amount of kelp that you have, and remove the bottommost warmth token and place it in your storage space. Then you'll select one of the rewards from one of the cards and gain its effect. So in this situation, you could take 1 crate, or 1 wood and 1 heat, 2 bubbles, or 1 pearl and 1 heat. Once you've claimed your reward, remove the card from the game and refresh the display. Next, let's go to the hot springs and find a nice ally. When you go to the hot spring actions, you'll spend the maximum amount of mushrooms that you have available, and then select one of these 2 characters and bring it to your player board, and place the feather marker on its lowest most spot. You may only have 1 ally at all times, so if you go to the hot springs again and acquire a second ally, you must discard your current one and replace it with the one you've just acquired. Allies have a specific track that the feather marker will go up on. When you complete those actions, you'll achieve those rewards immediately. So in this situation, whenever you get a treasure chest, you get a key. Whenever you do a purchase action for an item, you get a building. And when you have a white or blue flag encounter, you get half a point. When you get the half a point, the ally is discarded, and therefore you've completed the ally. So as you can see, this ally, and all allies for that matter, give you 2 secret objectives when you acquire it. You'll take the 2 secret objectives from the secret objective deck and place them in your hand. You'll select one, and then place the other one back to the bottom of the deck. This would be a good time to talk about secret objectives, seeing as they're one of the ways to score points. You can only have 4 secret objectives in your hand at all times, so whenever you see the symbol to draw 2 secret objectives, you draw 2 of them, and then discard 1 if you were going to go over to 5. You may discard any cards that you currently have, so not just the 2 you've just drawn. So in this situation, I've drawn 2 extra cards. I would obviously keep 1, but the other one must be discarded. Now this one could be gone, or you could select another one that you already previously had and remove that instead. Secret objectives have 2 halves to them, but you can complete both for half a point. So if you complete the top half, that's still as valuable as the bottom half, but getting both, that's 1 full point. And in this game, when you need to get 6 points to end the game, that is a good amount of points. Now let's go to the works to get some buildings. Buildings have 2 halves to them, funnily enough, bottom half and a top half. You select 1 full set of these, bring it over to your player board, and spend the maximum amount of wood that you have to complete the action. The buildings are the engine part of the game, and they're also connected to the familiar action, which is something you can do after doing a villager action. Simply place your familiar on the top or bottom familiar spot on your buildings. In this example, the topmost space will give you a level up, a bubble, and then you can turn 1 bubble into any 1 basic resource, whereas the bottom half will give you 1 additional village action and 1 bubble. The merits are always in effect. Now, one thing to remember is that when you do this additional village action from your familiar space, you will pick up your hero marker, move it to that specific location, gaining warmth, moving villagers, and then activating the space. Now let's move to our final location, the Academy, that uses the crystal resource. You can use crystals to level up, get an additional village action and increase the flowstone marker, or use crystals to get half a point. Let's start by spending 1 crystal to level up. Whenever you see the level up symbol, you can level up your dice, your familiar, or one of your hero cards. Leveling up your dice will increase the amount of dice that you can have during the cave battles. Leveling up your familiar will flip it over, and it means that all future familiar actions on the Iceberg or Sea will cost 0 warmth. And when it comes to leveling up your hero card, they're double-sided, so you'll have level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. As they level up, their abilities will increase, they'll give you merits, and if you get to the final level, they'll give you half a point. Now, if you level up again, you'll unlock the second hero deck in addition to your current one, so you'll get 2 abilities, potential of 2 merits, and 2 half a points. Now let's talk about the next space. You're spending crystals to do a village action, then increasing your flowstone. This is identical to doing a village action space as you would normally. However, you're using crystals as the permitted resource. So as my extra village action, I'm going to go to the shop, as I can spend my 2 crystals to create the permitted resource to do that action. Please be aware that your hero marker does not move to that location, and it will instead remain at the Academy. Now finally, let's turn 3 crystals into half a point. Whenever you gain half a point in this game, move the cylinder disc up, and when you gain another half a point, move it down. This is to state that you've gained 1 full point. So now that's all been covered, let's go back to the map action and talk about discovering a region. If you move a ship to a sea area, boarding a face-down map board, you may choose to reveal a new region as your hero action. However, you must also meet the requirements on the discovery tile on top of the map board. This one specifically says it wants 2 red merits and a map piece to discover the region to give you 1 full point, or 2 map pieces to discover the region to give you 1 full point. After completing those requirements, you flip over the map piece. You'll then move the ship to the closest pier in the new sea area. So in this situation, you would be sailing this way and going to this pier. Now we're going to repopulate the icebergs and the deep sea tokens and introduce 2 new tokens that you've yet to see. Start by pulling out the iceberg exploration tokens and place them on the 4 icebergs, followed by the 4 sea tokens to the 4 sea spots. Now the first new token is going to be these encounter flags. Place that next to the ship on the flag location. The next location is going to be landmarks. Landmarks correspond to these 4 cards in the display, and depending on the map you flip over, it will correspond to a different landmark. So in this situation, we flipped over the top left map, so we flip over the top left card, and then we'll place the standee on the landmark location. Now let's say on a future turn, our hero action is to have an encounter. You will draw 1 card from its respective deck where the encounter flags are. So at the start, it's in the sea area, which is going to be blue cards. But as always, if you have 2 of the same type, remember to discard 1 of them. Next, move the encounter flag clockwise to the next available space. So in this situation, it would go to the icebergs. As you can see, there are 2 flags, which means when you do the action, you'll take from 2 different decks. For the blue cards, it's the Deep Sea. For the white cards, it's on icebergs. Now let's move on to landmarks. You can activate a landmark with your hero marker being on the iceberg or the ship at its pier. To do so, you'll take one of the cubes you acquired after doing the Tavern action from your storage space and place it on the leftmost space on the card and get its immediate effects. In this situation, you gain a level up, half a point, and then the immediate effect of doing the dive action on the X spot, which will be for the map token. Now there is one hero action that you can do for free, and that's placing unlocked flow stones. When you've moved a flow stone to the top of the board during a village action, you can pick up that flow stone and place it onto a flow stone shrine on the map where your hero marker is. It'll give you 1 full point and a level up. Now let's move on to the final action, delving into caves. Let's move to the cave board to show you that. On the cave board, you'll have a meeple that's very similar to your hero marker. You'll move that meeple up to the first chamber to fight the monster. Now every monster card is going to have HP, a base damage, a reward, and an ability it's going to have during combat. Now to fight this monster, we're going to be rolling these blue dice and following the cave battle sequence. Now the amount of blue dice that you'll be rolling is depicted on your player board. At the start of the game, you have 2 dice, but as you level up, you increase to 3, 4, and 5. Then we'll roll all these dice, and I'll explain how each one of them works. But before I do that, I just want to let you know that you can spend 1 warmth to re-roll 1, some, or all of your dice that you choose to see fit. Now I've got an example roll here of 2 arrows and 1 critical hit, which I'm going to explain now. Arrows work by dealing 1 damage to the monster before it damages you, and each arrow that you roll will deal 1 damage. So in this situation, we have 2 arrows, which are going to deal 2 damage, but the critical hit die will increase all arrows by 1. So in this situation, both arrows now deal 4 damage, killing the monster instantly. Now let's say we didn't get the arrows that we needed. We'll then move on to the monster or /sneak phase. The monster will deal you 1 damage plus its pink die roll, which can be 1, 0, or 2. In this situation, we rolled a 1, and the base damage of the monster is also 1, so it'll deal you 2 damage in warmth. However, we have this sneak die, which will negate 2 damage, effectively nullifying the monster's damage to 0. However, in this example, let's say we don't have the sneak symbol and we have a lantern instead. We'd move over to our player board and reduce our warmth down to 1. If you ever go down to 0 warmth, you'll move your hero marker back up to the village space of the healer spot and acquire 4 warmth or 2 warmth and a potion. But let's go back to our example where our sneak die reduced the monster's damage to 0. After doing this, we'll move into the sword phase and start dealing damage. In this example, we have 2 swords die, which is going to deal 4 damage to the monster, easily killing it. Afterwards, you get your choice of a sea encounter, a key, and a secret objective. But before we continue on and move our meeple ahead, I do want to explain 2 more symbols that need to be addressed: magic and lanterns. Flip over your cave battle sequence card to reveal your spellbook. You can use spell dice to gain warmth. You can flip a die to its other side. You can use 2 magic to gain a wild, or use 5 magic to defeat a monster. And the final face is lanterns. Every lantern face allows you to draw 1 cave tile from the bag. And if you don't like the cave tile you've drawn, you have 2 more chances before you can draw the 3rd one. However, any future players that come by this spot and take lantern actions too can take from the 2 spots that you've left over. And the final thing I want to address is you can use your familiar in the cave. Place your familiar on its familiar board and acquire one of the faces to use during the battle. Remember, this will cost you 1 warmth to do so. So the monster's just been defeated and you've acquired the reward. You'll discard the monster away and you'll draw a new card from the green deck. You'll then move the meeple on through the tunnel to the next chamber, acquiring 1 crystal as the tunnel reward, and then flip the card over. However, if we do not defeat the monster, but it doesn't defeat us either, we can walk past the monster and get no rewards, but we still get the crystal in the tunnel reward, and then we flip the card over on the new space. Now, there are 2 final spots I need to talk about the cave before we go into end game scoring, and it's this location and this location. When you defeat this monster and you move through this tunnel, you'll pause at this location and activate the special chamber. You'll select this token and place it on here, then flip the card over. This card will have an ongoing or an instant effect, which will affect the flip side of this. So this is instant, and this is ongoing. And it'll state what happens when you enter it, or an ongoing effect during the game. And then the final space here is when you get to the end, you'll select one of the bonuses. And if you select the cave bonus, you get the bonus at the bottom of the card. Now let's get into end game. Let's say someone's just scored the final point, and that will trigger the end of the game by taking this half point marker and placing it to their player board. The round will end immediately, and all other players will take one final turn. Then, after completing the final round, players reveal their secret goal cards and score additional victory points for every fulfilled goal. The player with the most victory points wins the game, claiming the title of the boldest explorer in the village. In the case of a tie, the tied player with an extra half point wins. If still tied, the player with the most unlocked flow stones wins, and if still a tie, the tied players share a victory.